and welcome to episode 2 of our new series, Really Bad Security. I am joined today by Jorel VanOs and Anthony Coggins from Acrisure. We're going to be talking a lot about multi-factor authentication today and the upcoming MFApocalypse. Now, I think we'll all agree, and we'll certainly talk about the fact that MFA is critically important, but if you're looking at something to be a silver bullet, we will definitely learn that this is not that, as actually nothing is, right? So with that, Jorel, I'm going to hand things over to you, let you guys introduce yourself. Of course, we all know Anthony from CSA Events Galore already. Jorel, if you want to introduce yourself and get us started, I'm looking forward to it.
You bet. Thanks, Matt. So I'm Jorel VanOs. I'm the Interim Chief Information Security Officer for Acrisure. I'm also an amateur phishing artist. And I'm going to show two tools today. They're going to be EvilJinx 2 and GoFish. They're both open source software located on GitHub. I like to use them in combination with one another. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a man-in-the-middle phishing attack, which steals the MFA token and bypasses all forms of 2FA, including push, TOTP, and SMS. The only types of MFA this does not work against are security key protocols. So like FIDO2, WebAuthn, those types. So we're gonna go ahead and boot up EvilJinx. Pretty straightforward here. I gotta say, my Octa phishing worked this time, so that's always a good sign.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, last time around it didn't. I guess they're not sponsoring this particular.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, guys. So anyway, these are a fishlet. Some fishlets are little YAML configurations for different websites. There's a bunch more out on GitHub. These are just the ones I have right now. And my favorite one to do is LinkedIn, just because LinkedIn's never offered a security key or anything that this tool can't bypass. And also Microsoft's never got on my case about this, despite the fact that I use my real actual LinkedIn account every time. So I fish myself on the regular and they don't even care, which is fine. Works good for demos, usually. So let's go ahead and get into it then. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to enable LinkedIn. Normally what this would do is it would go and obtain an SSL certificate. In this case, we already have one. I wanted to set this up beforehand. This EvilJinx functions as a DNS server, so it can create these subdomains on the fly, as well as get this SSL certificates using certbot. So it's able to get those via Let's Encrypt. So let's go ahead and look at these, what are called lures next. So phishing lures are just different unique identifiers for these phishing templates. So it allows us to have those unique paths, which authorize the particular victim that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and create a new one now. So ID 6. So let's see, lures. Now I can do this again. There's a new lures, and so this is what the full URL looks like. So if you do not have this full path here, you are not authorized. So what would normally be happening if this was a new domain is we would get all kinds of requests from security researchers and automated requests from different, LinkedIn themselves and other folks trying to find out about us. They would use certificate transparency to try to find this. But we have a mechanism to defend against that. And I'll show you that now. So if you just type in this part, because you don't know the whole URL because you're using other methods, let's see what happens. I got to do it on here. So we get rickrolled. That's the default behavior out of the box. So right now, if you see any security researchers that come up as unauthorized requests on here, you know that that's an actual person or bot being redirected to Rick Astley. It's never going to give you up.
I can't believe that you only allowed that to play for 9 seconds, but I'm also kind of grateful that you only allowed that to play for 9 seconds, because I don't need to be singing it the rest of the day.
You will be singing it the rest of the day.
It'll probably still happen, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's one of the unique features here. Another thing we could do is we could redirect this website to the real LinkedIn, or to something that looks pretty legitimate, or just like a clone. So that way what we could do is we could submit this, or we can hide this for now, and then later make this evil. So first we would submit it to like every single, you would Google and McAfee or like CrowdStrike, whoever, submit that full URL to them, so they crawl the website and they classify it as business related, and there's no threat. Then when we're ready to phish, we go and actually launch the attack. We change that URL around, and they won't always know the difference because we're redirecting them. There's some new technologies in EvilJinx 2.4 that allows us to further defend against that. So the next thing with this lure is I want to customize it. I want to make it a little bit more personalized for the person. So let's see. So this our new URL is 6, and we're going to just call it. We could call it LinkedIn login screen, whatever. So now we have. If we go back and we get that URL. There's our customized one that we can use. We could put their email address in there or something like that. There is one aspect I really like to do, and that's where we edit some specific parameters, and we pre-fill their email address of the victim. And this is especially effective at making them think that they're looking at the real website. And the fun thing is they actually are looking at the real website. They're just looking at a proxied version of it. So let's go ahead and use my real email address here. Fun. And that means this will be pre-filled. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens, or actually let's go ahead and go to the Go Phish side. So we're going to spin up our Go Phish server. Normally, so the way Go Phish works is it actually, it clones websites. It makes very convincing copies, but we're going to use EvilJinx to be even more sophisticated in this particular case. So let's boot up that and go to Go Phish. I'll log in. Password is root and tour, of course. No, just kidding. And let's look at the email template that I created. So this is the LinkedIn template that I created just by copying and pasting a real LinkedIn and just modifying it a little bit. It's an endorsement. You could use something more customized, from, just say you could have it from Matt Nelson, and you could put his picture right here. That would be a good one. And he could have a little note that says, I would love to connect with you. It was great seeing you at the CSA event,
Yeah.
That
Although
kind of thing.
honestly, the endorsements, I like getting endorsements. I'm not gonna lie.
Who doesn't?
So, right?
Right.
Feels
Yeah,
good.
I like to prey on people's vanity. I find that that's pretty effective, and you can get some interesting folks to click.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if that was because I know you do a lot of the phishing stuff. If that was, I mean, and it makes sense. But I was gonna ask if that was a thing that you target.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, you can get a lot more customized and kind of spearfish, but just as a general one, the endorsement's pretty good. You don't even necessarily need to. You could change this to whatever, too. You can get more specific, and you can work it in. So this says the email is intended for this, and it'll put their title in. You can get as highly targeted as you want.
You even have an unsubscribe link in there. How more legit can you get than that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to keep it all intact for it to look legit. So I'm going to go ahead and create an email campaign. I'm just going to clone my old one because it works. The landing page doesn't matter. It's still one of my Acrosure ones because it doesn't matter in this case. Again, we're not using the clone one. We're going to redirect them to EvilJinx. And let's go ahead and send it to me specifically and not my entire company. That would be unfortunate. Like, we're not ready for a test right now for this particular one. So, and I don't want their LinkedIn creds. So let me launch this and go check my corporate email. And we can see the finished product here. This URL is one of the other ones I created earlier, but it's the same thing. And that looks pretty convincing in a lot of ways. We can see that the URL is pretty good. I like using a long subdomain like this because it flows in some case off the screen, especially if they're on a small window or they're just not paying attention. Same thing with this email address here.
Yeah, even when you hovered over that, I mean, my eyes went to the LinkedIn.com
Just
directly.
automatic. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, Microsoft could do a better job and highlight the real domain in there, I think, like in bold or something, kind of like Firefox does with the Apex domain too. I like it how they do that. So let's click on that. For the victim, we're going to be using Edge. And there's that pre-fill that I said I like. And so again, this is not the reason this looks so good it's not because we copied it, it's because it is the real LinkedIn in real time being streamed through EvilJinx. We can even see that over here, that's the real website. So I'm going to log in using my real actual LinkedIn password, which I'm totally going to change after this. All right, and it's going to send a text message to my phone. This could be a push notification. This could be, the QR code based, the TOTP rotating codes. Any form of these, this will still work with. It will steal. And now we're logging into LinkedIn. And this is my genuine LinkedIn page that I really use every single day. And I'm actually browsing the real LinkedIn website and Matt Nelson's real profile.
It's me.
So I can interact with the website, and when I even log off, it will go to the regular LinkedIn website. We could also redirect them to this. We could redirect them to a fake error page, the real error page. There's all kinds of options we can do, but my favorite part is just to see how transparent this proxy really is. There's nothing to worry about in terms of keeping it accurate, because it always will be. So now here on the attacker side, let's take a look at what we have. Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to go to this. So let's look at this particular session. So this is where we stole my password, as well as my cookie. That's where it gets most interesting. So we have information about the victim here. We have my nice long passphrase that's long and unique and about to be changed. And then here's my actual cookie. User agent information. You could do a drive-by attack if they weren't using the latest version of their browser. They had, didn't have all their plugins and stuff up to date. So now as the attacker, I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm going to import their cookie. And then I'm going to go to LinkedIn.
Look at that.
And now I'm bypassing 2FA quite transparently to the user, and they're not aware. Sometimes Microsoft will email the user and say, "It looks like you signed in a new computer," but most of the time I don't. And when they do, it doesn't really show up as obvious, because it just says, this IP address in the United States. It doesn't, and that's where my VM is. I'm paying $5 a month for this virtual machine, and I paid $10 for the domain per year. So it's really cheap to get started on this, and you can effectively, bypass all the forms of MFA that most people use every day.
Plus, honestly, I think like those messages probably go to junk mail, or who even checks those. Or, I mean, I think we always take it for granted that we check our email literally as they come in, but not everybody does that as well. Right. So it might be way too late before somebody even checks that email that they get from Microsoft, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is already too late, because it's after the login.
Yeah.
So you would know, you really wouldn't know, and you would already have that cookie.
So why does U2F 502 WebAuthn protect against this attack?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm glad you brought it up. So the reason that works is security key protocols, the ones that you just mentioned. There's a cryptographic public key cryptography between the browser and the key, and then the browser and the website. So when you use, say, Google Enhanced Security, which I really very much highly encourage that you do that, it locks down your Gmail account, so only FIDO keys are allowed. And that seems like a pain, but it's really worth it, because it makes you, in a lot of ways, effectively invulnerable to remote account takeover, which is what we think of as most types of phishing for account takeover. Because Google actually deployed this to their own employees, I believe about 5 years ago. They have over 100,000 employees and contractors, and since then they have had 0 remote account takeovers. Similarly, on that enhanced email platform or security platform, they've had 0 account takeovers of anyone enrolled in it. Okay. And so when you go to gmail.com and you enroll it, your key is signed with public key certificate to the real gmail.com. If you go to fake gmail.com, it can't prompt your key, your YubiKey, to light up because it's not even the right domain name to begin with. Also, you're not giving them a code, you're doing public key crypto. So there's a challenge response mechanism.
Do you know
And then
anything
that's
about
all.
the difficulty of implementing it as far as other vendors and organizations? Is this fairly easily implemented on the back end?
Yeah, I'm not a developer or coder or even very good at this stuff in general. So I don't consider myself an expert, but it doesn't seem to be terribly difficult to implement, just like 2FA in the first place wasn't. It took years before even most sites have it. Most banks don't. They use pseudo 2FA. This would work on all that as well, but there's a number of measures that we can do, and it shouldn't be terribly difficult it's just a matter of needing to, and then adoption. I think that's another reason is even when we've had the ability to do this on a lot of websites for years, no one really uses security keys, or not. Shouldn't say no one. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of nerds watching this, and you're like, I've been using these forever. Well, so have I understand, but that's the kind of the reason I'm trying to do this is educate. I'm not trying to show you how to hijack your significant other's accounts or your exes or whatever, and I'm not trying to say that 2FA is useless. I'm just trying to say that eventually the attackers are going to wisen up, and they're going to employ techniques like this. And we need to be ready as security practitioners to be proactively defending against this and starting to do things like deploy security keys to our VIPs or to IT, and then eventually try to get the whole organization there. So then when we get to that point, we've effectively solved, and I know that eventually, nothing's 100%. Eventually there will probably be holes, and those will be patched, that kind of thing. But effectively, at least in the meantime, for the 5 years now running, we will have solved a remote account takeover, which is such a huge threat. Now, you can still be victim to, say, business email compromise. Google themselves was, because there's a fake company or real company, and they'd posed as them and sent them invoices. Those things don't involve passwords, so obviously that's not applicable. But it does solve a very major, potentially one of the largest issues that faces us every day. And that's why I call this the MFApocalypse, is because eventually when MFA adoption hits a critical tipping point, 50%, 60%, or maybe even before then, you're going to see the attackers update to tools like this. And when they do, your current MFA is going to be useless, or only able to work against the legacy attacks. This new modern stuff's been out for 2 years in the public sphere. It's been out more privately elsewhere.
So I was going to ask that question. Knowing that, is the reason why we haven't seen the multi-factor apocalypse happen already because of there's enough targets that are slightly easier that are not behind MFA that they're hitting now? Is that kind of the gist of that, or what are there other reasons, I guess, behind? Because this seems fairly simple, albeit maybe more targeted. Why are there not more bad actors taking advantage of this already, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know the answer because I'm not a bad actor usually. So, but my guess would be that I haven't seen phishing kits themselves do this. The nice thing about phishing kits is they're very automated.
Yeah.
When you take over one account, you can immediately spread to the next. As far as I know, at least with these existing tools, that automation piece is a lot more difficult.
Okay.
The other thing is the low-hanging fruit factor is if you could just, like you mentioned, you can just move into the next victim if they have MFA.
Yeah.
Or just spam them into trying to push and approve if you just try them over and over in Office 365 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time before the attackers do get there. And that's what we need to be more proactive about, thinking about what these attacks look like and how to defend against them more proactively.
So as I always like to do in all of these, because I do feel that sometimes as security folks, we're very quick to point out the flaws and the holes in systems and technologies without answering the more positive side of what if. So a couple of things there. If the MFA vendors and everyone else already knows that this is there, do you see I guess what's going to come first, the chicken or the egg? Will we change our technology to prevent this from happening before the MFA apocalypse. I feel like that Umbrella Academy right now, like there's some time traveling stuff that's going to happen to avoid the apocalypse here. But so will that happen? And then secondly, why are those companies not doing more now? I get, and I know you can't answer for the companies, but just your thoughts in general as to why are we not more rapidly changing away from technology that seems so easily defeated?
Yeah, so I mean, some of it's an education moment. Some folks don't know about it. The other thing is the vendors themselves need to widely implement it. In a lot of cases, they haven't. Google and to some extent Microsoft and Duo have been pretty proactive about that, but you need those underlying technology providers to enable robust security key measures in order to be able to do it in the first place. And my thoughts are I don't think that the vendors and the websites out there are going to really implement this widely until the MFA apocalypse happens.
What happens?
The good thing about the MFA apocalypse is when it does happen, and I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but I don't imagine it'll be too long from now. When that does occur, then at least then there'll be that much more of an urgency to get everyone enabled, because you got to have everyone involved. So you have to have the actual, the website or the vendor themselves, as well as the end users and IT pushing for that. So it'll take, I think, unfortunately, it will take mass exploitation. Similarly to MFA adoption didn't happen until, mass exploitation. We'll see the same thing here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the good thing is when we do get there, that's how we get towards, a passwordless future or a future without remote account takeover, is when this becomes normal or even integrated virtualized into our phones via secure enclaves. That's when and there's like a security key built into every laptop and every phone. That's how we get to universal adoption of this technology, and then go into a future where there is no ability to steal your second factor or steal or do a remote account takeover. And that's, as a security practitioner, that's the most exciting thing for me, is we can get to that world. I think that there's going to be a lot of growing pains, and it's going to be pretty tremendous damage first, but at least we will get there. And the adversaries will have to shift tactics.
So if I'm a company that's watching this and I'm thinking to myself, well, I either have an issue here or I haven't implemented MFA, or I have it and now I'm scared because this apocalypse is coming, without using the words defense in depth or layered security, can we talk? That should be on the back of our shirts, right, Anthony? Can we talk a little bit about, again, this is important, right? It's important to have MFA, but what are some other, let's talk about how, given the fact that we have the technology that we have right now, that we can still be secure utilizing MFA, and what? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, those buzzwords are pretty applicable to this situation, honestly, because if you do have robust email filtering, and while that will obviously never be 100%, those types of tools, especially the newer ones that are around, shout outs to Abnormal Security, you can start to at least get rid of the low hanging fruit. This isn't a scenario too where we're looking at spear phishing, but unfortunately, spear phishing, eventually your attackers are going to be pretty effective at what they're doing. But that doesn't mean that user awareness training, of course, is always helpful too. But those are the layers that we can start to build on while we start to adopt U2F, FIDO2, and WebAuthn.
So you had mentioned a little bit about YubiKeys as well earlier. So if you were looking at that, I mean, would you want to go after your high profile targets inside of your organization first? Is that the thought there as well?
Yeah, you would want to do your own internal risk assessment to understand whose credentials are most impactful if they were lost. So it could be people that click on phishing emails all the time because you've done your user awareness training and phishing simulations. It could be your executives. It could be finance folks, HR folks, whoever has PAI, PHI. It's probably definitely going to be IT. Again, about that defense in depth, it would be good to have separate MFA or separate accounts for administration and domain administrator and global administrator that could help to segment that out. So if they do phish one cred, they won't have it all. Similarly, obviously not reusing passwords. and trying to get, single sign-on logging, all that fun stuff. Because you could potentially have your SIM trigger on some of this stuff if it sees that you could, because in essence you have impossible travel, because my server here is in Atlanta and I'm in Grand Rapids. So you could potentially be able to detect that on the back end with SIM. If this was, say, an Office 365 or something, so a tool that did have access to that was logged back into your SSO and your SIM.
So I think what we're saying here is don't not implement multi-factor authentication because of the upcoming MFA apocalypse, because it is still a very critical part of your defense in depth and layered security strategy. I just wanted to see Anthony's reaction to that. But at the same time, I think it is important to be aware that that there is a chance that this might be really bad security if you are only relying on your MFA as your security posture. So with that, Jorel, Anthony, this was super fascinating. I really appreciate you doing this for us, Jorel. Any final words on the MFA apocalypse, or is it MFA apocalypse?
I'm gonna go change my password now.
I saw you have an A in there. You could just make that an @ sign, and I think
then it'll be secure. I'm gonna change it to summer 2020 !
Dang it! You stole my password. How did you know that? Anyway,
please don't fish, Jorel.
Please don't. But yeah, that was my other things. Please don't fish me. I love to use my account as an example, but this is not an invitation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't do that. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. Everyone that's watching, please like, subscribe, share, all of that sort of good YouTube stuff. And we'll see you again for episode 3. Thanks, everyone.